Bismillahir-Rahman-ir-Rahim. Welcome to the Missing Dots. In an age obsessed with absolute proof, we forget that certainty can be a cage. The moment God becomes as visible as the sun, free will collapses, and belief turns into a biological reflex rather than a moral choice. This is the secret behind divine hiddenness. When the ultimate reality veils His majesty, the human test remains alive. Between the silence of the heavens and the noise of our doubts lies a fragile space, a space where sincerity, courage, and the possibility of real faith are born. Today, we explore why God refuses to overwhelm the mind and why His hiddenness is not absence, but the very architecture that makes us human.
It is, it's so incredibly quiet out here today.
Yeah.
Sitting in this courtyard, after the prayer, the air just feels completely
It
different.
really does. It makes you just slow down.
Exactly.
And I'm just really glad you're here with us, listening in. If you're sitting with us right now, maybe just take a breath.
Yeah, settle in.
Because we've been spending the last, couple of hours?
At least a couple hours, yeah.
Going through this really heavy stack of academic papers. I mean, my notes are just scattered all over this table.
It's a lot of material.
It is. And honestly, it's rare to read something that forces you to just, put the pages down, look up at the sky, and completely reevaluate how you think the world works.
Those are the best moments, though. When a completely new paradigm just clicks into place.
Right.
And suddenly a question that has bothered you for years, it just sort of dissolves.
That's exactly what happened to me this afternoon. Because we're looking at this really fascinating intersection today. These researchers have pulled together classical Islamic theology, specifically Kalam, and they've layered it with modern cognitive neuroscience.
Your clinical psychology, too.
Yes, exactly, clinical psychology. And they're all pointing at this one massive ancient question, which is, why is God hidden?
It is the ultimate question. I mean, for so many people, it sits at the very center of modern skepticism.
You hear it everywhere.
You really do.
Like the philosopher J.L. Schellenberg, he basically built his entire career on it. And public commentators like Alex O'Connor, they talk about it all the time.
Right. They call it the problem of divine hiddenness.
Exactly. And if you're listening, you've probably had this thought yourself. I know I have. The argument is really straightforward.
It's very intuitive.
It is. It basically says, if there's a loving God, right, and this God actually wants a relationship with us, then He should make His existence physically undeniable.
Right.
He should make it so clear that no reasonable, sincere person could ever doubt it. And because He doesn't do that, the argument assumes this God must not exist. Or maybe He just doesn't care.
And, it's a product of how we're trained to view reality today. We live in this era defined entirely by the scientific method.
That's right.
So if something is real, we expect to be able to just put it under a microscope. We want to measure it.
We want to see it with our own eyes.
Exactly. We want it to light up the sky. We kind of demand this empirical dominance.
We just want the evidence to force us to believe. But reading through these papers, they completely flip that premise upside down.
They really do.
They're arguing that this hiddenness isn't a failure to communicate.
Yeah.
It isn't God being distant, and it isn't some divine embarrassment where God is playing hide and seek. It is an absolute structural necessity for us to even exist as functioning human beings.
It's a massive shift in thinking. The researchers basically propose that if God actually did what the skeptics are asking for,
Right.
if He revealed His unshielded majesty in a way that was undeniably visible, human free will wouldn't just be philosophically compromised.
It would be biologically obliterated.
Biologically obliterated.
Let's actually just stop and think about that phrase for a second. Biologically obliterated. Not just that we would feel guilty or overwhelmed emotionally, but that our physical neurological capacity to make a choice would be wiped out.
Yeah, because we operate under this assumption that if God pulled back the veil, if He showed His full majesty in the sky right now, we would all just fall to our knees in this beautiful, enlightened, peaceful state of belief.
Right, like a movie scene.
Exactly. But that completely ignores how the human nervous system is actually constructed.
So let's get into the mechanics of that. Yeah. Because the neuroanatomy they discuss here is, well, it's fascinating.
It's incredible.
When you and I talk about making a choice, whether it's evaluating a piece of evidence or deciding what's morally right or wrong, or choosing to believe in a concept, what is actually happening inside our physical brain.
Well, the heavy lifting for that kind of conscious choice happens in the prefrontal cortex, the PFC.
Okay, the PFC.
Yeah, that's the area right behind your forehead. It is basically the evolutionary crown jewel of the human brain.
It handles the complex stuff.
Exactly. Executive control. It's responsible for abstract reasoning, moral deliberation, navigating really complex social situations, and long-term planning.
So it's the part of you that can sit back, look at a situation from multiple angles, weigh the options, and make a conscious, voluntary choice.
Yes. So the PFC is the thoughtful, deliberative, human part of us. It's where you kind of sit and steer the ship.
Right.
But here's the catch. It's relatively slow.
Slow how?
Well, it takes time to gather data, compare it against memories, and formulate a judgment. The brain also has this ancient, lightning-fast survival system.
The limbic system.
The limbic system, yeah. And specifically, there's this small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala.
Right, I've heard of the amygdala.
The amygdala is your primary threat detection center. Its entire job is to scan the environment constantly for danger or for any stimuli that is just completely overwhelming.
So when you say lightning fast, what kind of speed are we talking about here? Like, give me the mechanism. If I see something terrifying, how does the brain route that information?
Okay, let's say you're walking in the woods
Okay.
and you see a coiled shape on the ground.
Like a snake.
Right. Photons bounce off that shape, they hit your retina, and they travel down the optic nerve. That visual data is sent to a relay station in the brain called the thalamus.
Got it.
Now, the thalamus actually splits the signal. It sends one slow, highly detailed signal up to your prefrontal cortex so you can consciously figure out if it's a snake or just a stick.
Right.
But it sends another much faster, low-resolution signal straight to the amygdala.
A biological shortcut.
Exactly. That shortcut signal reaches the amygdala in about 12 to 20 milliseconds.
That's short and 20.
Practically instantaneous. Now, for the prefrontal cortex to process the detailed image, actually think about it and evaluate it, that takes about 300 to 500 milliseconds.
Oh, wow. So the survival center is sounding the alarm way before the thinking center even registers that an event is happening.
Decisively. And this right here is where the demand for absolute physical proof of God completely breaks down.
Because of the speeds.
Because of the speeds and the scale. Imagine if God actually did what the skeptic asks. Imagine if the sky fractured this very second and the absolute infinite majesty of the Creator was physically, undeniably visible above us. What actually happens in the human brain?
Well, according to this clinical model we read, the visual cortex wouldn't just send a normal signal. It would send a maximum threat, maximum awe signal straight to the amygdala.
Right, because it would be an event of infinite scale. Your brain has no category for it.
It's unprecedented.
Completely. The amygdala would trigger a catastrophic alarm. It would initiate what neurobiologists call a limbic hijack.
A limbic hijack. Break that down for me. What does a limbic hijack actually feel like in the body?
So the amygdala signals a region called the locus coeruleus, which basically acts like a biological siren.
Okay.
It instantly floods your entire brain and bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes dramatically.
Right.
Your blood pressure shoots up. Your pupils dilate to take in maximum light. And most importantly, your body enters a state of absolute tonic immobility.
Tonic immobility. You freeze.
You freeze completely.
And while my body is freezing and my heart is pounding out of my chest, what is happening to the prefrontal cortex? Like the part of me that's supposed to be making a free, moral choice to believe.
It gets shut down.
Completely.
Completely. This is a built-in survival mechanism. Under extreme, inescapable, overwhelming stimuli, the brain decides that thinking is too slow and therefore it's dangerous.
Wow.
So blood flow is literally shunted away from the prefrontal cortex. Your working memory collapses. Your ability to engage in abstract reasoning just vanishes.
So you're not thinking at all?
Not at all. The organism use shifts entirely from deliberative, conscious cognition into a pure, blind survival reflex.
So if God pulls back the veil, it isn't like sitting down to an open book test where we finally get the clear answers and can thoughtfully write them down.
No, not.
It's more like, I don't know, a student trying to take a calculus exam while a full-grown lion is roaring 2 inches from their face.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. You aren't sitting there thoughtfully evaluating the calculus problem.
Right. You can't even see the paper.
Exactly. Your nervous system has completely taken over the driver's seat. You are just trying to survive the sheer presence of the lion.
I was reading the section in the papers where they quoted Dr. Babette Rothschild.
Oh, yes.
She's a clinical psychologist, right?
Yeah.
She works with patients suffering from severe PTSD and extreme trauma.
That's right.
And her observation really stuck with me. Let me see if I can remember it. She wrote something like, under threat of annihilation, the patient does not have a self to deploy. The nervous system has become the self.
That sentence is the key to this entire discussion. The nervous system has become the self.
The nervous system has become the self.
If God manifested with absolute, undeniable sensory certainty, you would not have a conscious self left to choose him. You wouldn't be a moral agent evaluating theological evidence. You would be experiencing what these researchers call ontological coercion.
Ontological coercion. I want to make sure I really understand that term.
Yeah.
Because coercion usually means an external force, like a dictator holding a weapon to your head, forcing you to sign a document.
Right.
You sign it, but you didn't choose it. So what makes it ontological?
Ontological coercion is when the very nature of reality, the sheer density of God's presence, overrides your biology. You would be biologically compelled to submit. There's no dictator with a weapon, it's just the overwhelming reality of existence short-circuiting your brain.
Which completely changes how we define the word belief.
Exactly.
If my nervous system is flooded with adrenaline and my higher brain functions are offline and I'm frozen in awe and terror, am I actually believing in God in any meaningful sense? Or am I just reacting the same way I react to a thunderclap?
You're just reacting. It's a biological reflex, like a knee jerk.
Wow.
And what's really fascinating here is how perfectly this modern neurological understanding maps onto classical Islamic epistemology.
Right, the Kalam scholars.
Yes, the scholars of Kalam, centuries ago, they categorized human knowledge into two very distinct types. I mean,
Yeah.
They didn't have fMRI machines, obviously.
No, of course not.
But they understood the philosophy of the mind perfectly. They divided knowledge into daruri and ikhtiyari.
Tell me about those two categories. Let's start with Duri.
Okay, so daruri knowledge is compelled, involuntary knowledge. It is knowledge that bypasses your will completely.
Bypasses the will.
Yeah. You don't choose to know it. It forces itself upon you.
Okay, so like the feeling of touching a hot stove?
Yes. Perfect example.
If I accidentally touch a hot pan, my hand recoils before I even consciously realize it's burning.
Yeah.
I don't sit there and think, the temperature of this metal is transferring heat to my skin, therefore I should believe it is hot.
Right, you'd burn your hand off if you did that.
Exactly. The pain forces the knowledge into my brain.
Precisely. Or, knowing that the sun is bright. If you step outside at noon on a clear day and look up, you don't evaluate evidence and choose to believe the sun is there.
No, it's just blinding.
The overwhelming sensory data of the light forces the knowledge upon your visual cortex. You have no choice but to know it's there.
Okay, I follow.
And because you have no choice, classical scholars point out that this kind of knowledge carries absolutely zero spiritual reward. It requires no moral effort.
Right, because my pupils dilating in the bright light isn't an act of piety. It's just biology doing its job.
Exactly. There's no virtue in acknowledging something you are physically incapable of denying.
Okay, so that's Daruri. What about the other category?
The other category is ikhtiyari knowledge. This is volitional, chosen knowledge.
And neurologically, if Daruri is the amygdala and the brainstem reacting,
Yes.
then ikhtiyari is where the prefrontal cortex comes back into play.
You got it. Ikhtiyari knowledge involves a network in the brain called the default mode network, along with the ventromedial prefrontal cortex.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
It is, but basically it's the system that requires you to sit with information, to evaluate abstract values, to resolve your internal doubts, and to integrate testimony and observation over time.
So it's slow.
Very slow. It's a reflective, deeply personal process. You have to actively align your inner desires with the truth you're discovering.
It requires a struggle.
It requires immense internal effort, and that is exactly why it has moral weight.
Okay, I see where this is going.
The argument here is that if God provided 100% sensory certainty, belief would migrate permanently from the thoughtful, reflective prefrontal cortex straight down into the primitive brainstem.
We wouldn't be worshipers anymore. We would be biological automatons.
We would just be reacting to stimuli. The entire test of life, the spiritual journey of seeking, questioning, and finding peace would be completely destroyed.
If you're listening to this right now, just think about how profound that is.
It really is.
We always assume that doubt is a bad thing, right? Like it's an enemy to faith. But virtue, real moral character, and genuine belief can only exist in the gap between doubt and absolute conviction.
Yes.
If you remove that gap, if you make the truth so blindingly obvious that no human nervous system can physically doubt it, you actually remove the human being from the equation. You remove our capacity to choose the good.
You also remove the space for love?
Oh, how so?
Well, true love cannot be coerced. It fundamentally requires the freedom to reject the beloved. If God's presence was an inescapable, overwhelming force that terrorized our nervous systems into compliance, we wouldn't love him.
No, we'd be terrified.
We would just be terrified hostages suffering from Stockholm Syndrome.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, humans have been complaining about this hiddenness for thousands of years.
Oh, absolutely.
Has anyone in history ever actually asked to close that gap?
Yeah.
Like to see God directly,
Yeah.
physical eyes to physical presence.
They have. And what's remarkable is that the Quran gives us a very precise, almost clinical case study of exactly what happens when a human being asks for that.
The story of Prophet Musa.
Moses. Yeah, Prophet Moses.
I was actually reading this part in the sources in Surah Al-Araf, chapter 7, verse 143.
Right.
Musa has this incredibly intimate conversation with Allah. He's already a prophet. He already believes, but he wants to close that final epistemic distance.
He wants to see.
He asks Allah directly. He says, "My Lord, show yourself to me that I may look at you."
It is the ultimate request from a place of deep love and yearning. He wants absolute, unmediated certainty.
And Allah replies, "You will not see me, but look at the mountain. If it remains in place, then you will see me."
Yes.
And then the verse describes that when Allah revealed just a fraction of his glory to the mountain crumbled to dust, and Musa fell down unconscious.
And the Arabic word used in the Quran for his collapse is sa'ika.
Sa'ika. What does that mean exactly?
It means to be thunderstruck, to swoon away, to completely lose consciousness from an overwhelming shock.
Wow.
When we look at this not just as a theological story, but through a neurosomatic lens, it is incredible what's being described.
Slow that down for me. What is physically happening to Musa's body in that moment?
It's a massive vasovagal syncope.
A vasovagal syncope.
Yes. This is an acute, stress-induced shutdown of the body. You see, the human nervous system is finite.
Right. It has limits.
Very strict limits. It is calibrated over millennia to process localized, finite stimuli within the bounds of time and space. We can process the heat of a fire, the sound of a voice, the sight of a landscape.
Sure.
But an unmediated ontological presence, the ultimate infinite reality of the Creator, delivers infinite sensory and existential data.
And a finite architecture cannot hold infinite data.
Exactly.
If I try to plug my laptop directly into a nuclear power plant without a transformer, it doesn't just charge faster, it melts the hardware.
That is the perfect analogy. The mountain in the story represents physical, inanimate matter. It literally loses its structural integrity. It crumbles to dust because finite matter cannot contain infinite presence. The atomic cohesion fails.
And the human nervous system is way more fragile than solid granite.
Far more fragile. So Musa fainting isn't just an emotional reaction. He isn't just swooning because he's moved.
No, it's biology.
It's a biological defense mechanism. The vagus nerve overreacts to the infinite stimuli, drops his heart rate and blood pressure instantly, and deprives the brain of oxygen to force a reboot.
It forces a reboot.
The brain shuts down consciousness entirely to prevent permanent psychological and physical fragmentation.
So the nervous system crashes to save the hardware.
Subhanallah, yeah. The system crashes to save the hardware.
That is terrifying, but also deeply awe-inspiring.
It brings to mind the Shia narrations about the Prophet Muhammad's night journey, the Isra wal Miraj.
Oh, I'm familiar with that. That's when the prophet travels through the heavens, ascending through the different levels of reality.
Yes. He is accompanied on this journey by the archangel Jibril, or Gabriel. They travel higher and higher, but when they reach a certain point, a boundary called the lot tree of the utmost boundary, Jibril stops.
He stops.
He stops. He tells the prophet that he cannot take another step. The narration says Jibril warns him, "If I were to proceed a fingertip's length further, I would be burned by the light of his glory."
But think about that. Even an angel,
Right.
a being made of light, created entirely for proximity to the divine, has a structural limit.
Even angelic beings are created, finite things. The sheer density of manifest glory is ontologically destructive to anything that is not God.
So when I sit here and complain that God is hidden, when I wish he would just show himself so I wouldn't have to struggle with doubt, I'm looking at it completely backward.
Completely backward.
The veil isn't a punishment. It isn't God ignoring us or playing games. The veil is a shield.
It is a neurobiological insulator. It's an act of profound structural mercy. It allows us to exist.
Wow.
It allows us to engage with the divine, to learn about him, to talk to him, and to love him without being completely annihilated by the sheer force of his reality.
It creates a safe distance. It's like looking at the reflection of the sun in a calm pool of water.
Yes.
You can study it, you can appreciate its light, but if you bypass the reflection and stare directly into the sun itself, you go blind.
Exactly. The hiddenness is the very thing that allows the human test and the human being to remain alive.
Okay, I hear that. If God showed his full, unmasked reality, it would destroy our free will and physically fry our nervous systems?
Correct.
But if I'm a skeptic listening to this, I might think, fine, I concede the point. Don't show me your infinite face and melt my brain. But what about smaller miracles?
What kind of miracles?
Well, the skeptic might say, just part a sea for me, or turn a stick into a snake, or make a star do a figure eight in the sky.
Right. Localized anomalies.
Yeah. Just give me one undeniable, physical, localized miracle that breaks the laws of physics right in front of my eyes. That wouldn't melt my amygdala, but it would give me the absolute proof I need to believe.
It's a very common, very intuitive argument. Just give me one undeniable miracle and I will be a believer forever.
Right.
But this fundamentally misunderstands human psychology. And again, history proves this assumption completely wrong. We don't have to guess what would happen. We just have to look at the Pharaoh in the time of Musa.
Oh, Pharaoh's the perfect test case for this.
He really is.
Because he had a front row seat to some of the greatest, most undeniable physical miracles in human history.
Absolutely. He watched a piece of dead wood, a staff, literally turn into a living, breathing snake.
Right in front of him.
Right in front of him. He saw his own master magicians utterly defeated. He saw the Nile River turn to blood.
The plagues.
Yes, he witnessed plagues of locusts and frogs covering his entire empire. He literally stood at the edge of the Red Sea and watched it split into towering, impossible walls of water.
You literally cannot ask for more undeniable physical proof than that. The skeptic's demand was fully met for Pharaoh.
And yet, what was his reaction? Did he fall to his knees? Did he submit with genuine faith and say, okay, you've proven it, I believe?
No. He kept finding reasons to deny it. He looked at these reality-breaking events and called them obvious magic. He doubled down.
Why did he do that?
Why indeed?
Because raw physical anomalies do not produce long-term transformative moral commitment if the person's heart is rooted in arrogance.
A physical miracle cannot force a psychological submission.
Exactly. And the work of Dr. Leon Festinger on cognitive dissonance is crucial to understanding this mechanism.
Let's explore that. How does cognitive dissonance actually apply to seeing a miracle? What is the mechanism happening in Pharaoh's head?
Cognitive dissonance is the intense psychological pain you feel when you hold two contradictory beliefs, or when you encounter evidence that severely threatens your core identity, your worldview, or your sense of autonomy.
It's not just an abstract idea, right?
No, it produces physical discomfort in the body. The human brain hates that discomfort. It wants to resolve it immediately.
So how does the brain resolve that pain when it sees a massive miracle?
Almost never by changing its core beliefs.
Real?
Changing your entire worldview is psychologically exhausting and terrifying. Instead, the brain deploys something called motivated reasoning.
Motivated reasoning.
Yes, it actively scrambles to discredit the evidence. It invents bizarre rationalizations to force the new data to fit into the old worldview.
So when Pharaoh sees a miracle that definitively proves he is not the supreme god of Egypt, his brain refuses to process it as a divine miracle.
Right. Think about Pharaoh's identity. His entire sense of self, his political power, his ego, his daily life, it all relies entirely on him being the ultimate authority.
He's a god on earth.
Exactly. So a miracle from the true God is an existential threat to Pharaoh's ego. It means he has to bow down.
And his ego won't let him do that.
So his brain rationalizes it to stop the pain of cognitive dissonance. He tells himself, this is just advanced magic. Musa isn't a prophet. He's just a very skilled sorcerer trying to steal my kingdom with a trick.
He protects his autonomy by lying to himself about the obvious.
Yes.
But wait, let me push back on this.
Go ahead.
What about Pharaoh's magicians? They were standing right there. They saw the exact same miracle, the staff turning into a snake. But they fell in prostration immediately. They submitted. Why did the miracle work on them, but not on Pharaoh?
That is the perfect question to ask. And the difference between them reveals everything. It basically comes down to two specific factors: expertise and ego involvement.
Walk me through how expertise played a role.
Okay, so the magicians were the ultimate experts in illusion. They knew the absolute hard limits of human trickery.
Right.
When they threw their ropes and used sleight of hand or mercury to make them look like snakes, they knew it was a trick. But when Musa threw his staff, their deep expertise allowed them to recognize instantly that this was not an illusion.
It broke the laws of reality.
It broke reality. A layperson might think, oh, Musa's just a better magician. But the experts knew that what they were seeing was humanly impossible. They recognized divine intervention because they knew exactly where the boundaries of the physical world ended.
That makes perfect sense. And what about the ego part? I mean, they were employed by Pharaoh. Didn't they have a lot to lose?
They had their lives to lose, yes, but their internal ego involvement was very low compared to Pharaoh. Being a magician was just their profession. They were hired hands. When they saw the truth, letting go of their prior beliefs didn't require them to destroy their entire sense of self. They could admit they were wrong without ceasing to exist psychologically.
Ah, I see.
But for Pharaoh, admitting Musa was right meant admitting he was not a god. It meant absolute ego death. He couldn't survive it psychologically, so he chose denial.
So the takeaway here is that miracles only work on people who are already humble enough or objective enough to accept them.
That is the profound reality. Physical miracles do not produce faith in an insincere heart. They only produce rationalization in the arrogant. They produce submission only in the humble.
Which means, if we apply this to today,
Yeah, let's do that.
if a massive, undeniable miracle happened right now, let's say the ocean parted on live television, captured on 1,000 smartphones, what would happen?
Modern observers wouldn't fall to their knees.
No.
The scientific community wouldn't suddenly declare that God exists. They would call it an unprecedented atmospheric and geological anomaly.
They'd say it's just science we haven't figured out yet.
Exactly. They would demand a peer-reviewed study. They would send teams to look for seismic activity, underwater volcanic vents, or magnetic field disruptions.
I can hear the news anchors now. They'd say, we don't understand the mechanism yet, but scientists assure us there must be a natural, material explanation that we will discover in time.
Because their dominant worldview, methodological naturalism, requires that every single event has a natural, material cause.
Right.
A supernatural miracle threatens that core framework. So they would use motivated reasoning to protect their worldview, exactly like Pharaoh did. The language changes, but the psychological mechanism is identical.
That is absolutely fascinating. If God used a sign-in-the-sky method today, people would just adapt to it. It wouldn't change their hearts. It wouldn't make them better people.
They would adapt, they would build new scientific models to rationalize it, and they would move on. True faith requires a change of heart, a reorientation of the will. Coercive physical miracles do not achieve that.
Okay, let's pivot here. If God doesn't use coercive miracles, and if he intentionally hides his full majesty to protect our free will and our nervous systems,
Right.
how are we actually supposed to find him?
Right.
If you look at the world today, it feels incredibly quiet. If he isn't parting seas, what is the mechanism for a normal person to find the truth?
The Quran highlights a very specific concept called Iman bil Ghaib.
Iman bil Ghaib.
Yes. This translates to belief in the unseen. And the internal mechanism that allows humans to do this is called the fitra.
The fitra, the innate human disposition.
Yes.
Sure.
It is the innate, pre-installed orientation toward the divine. But there is a massive misconception about the fitra that these academic papers clarify beautifully, and it is something most people get completely wrong.
What's the misconception?
A lot of people, both believers and atheists, assume the fitra is like a loud, undeniable megaphone inside our heads.
Like a voice yelling at you.
Right. They think we are born with this screaming, obvious knowledge of God, and therefore anyone who claims to be an atheist is just being purely stubborn and lying to themselves.
But the research suggests it's not a megaphone at all.
Not at all. It is much more like a highly calibrated biological and spiritual antenna.
An antenna. I like that. Explain how that works.
Think about Noam Chomsky's theory of universal grammar in linguistics.
Okay.
Chomsky argued that humans are born with the neural architecture primed to acquire language. We have the hardware built in. But a baby doesn't just start speaking full sentences in a vacuum.
They have to hear people talking.
Exactly. The capacity is there, but it requires exposure to linguistic input. It requires activation from the environment.
So we have the internal hardware for recognizing God, but it needs to receive the right signal to activate.
Precisely. The signal of God's presence in the universe is subtle. It's deliberately non-coercive, and like any subtle signal, it requires a good signal-to-noise ratio to be heard.
You have to tune it.
You have to actively orient your attention toward it. You have to tune the receiver.
And what happens if there's too much noise in the environment?
If there's too much noise, you simply cannot hear the signal. The hardware is fine, but the interference is too strong. And this brings us directly into the crisis of the modern world.
Oh, man.
There is a section in these papers referencing Dr. Adam Alter's research on digital noise and behavioral addiction, and it is chilling.
Oh, this part of the reading really hit me hard. He notes that the average person touches their smartphone 2,617 times a day.
2,617 times.
If you're listening to this on your phone right now, think about that number.
It is staggering.
Every single touch, every swipe, every notification delivers a tiny microdose of dopamine to the brain. We're constantly checking, scrolling, reacting. I know I do it.
We all do. And we have to ask, neurologically, what does that relentless bombardment do?
What does it do?
It keeps the brain locked in a state of constant task-positive activation. Your brain is always reacting to immediate, trivial, external stimuli.
Which suppresses the default mode network we talked about earlier.
Completely suppresses it. The default mode network, the DMN, is the network in the brain that activates when you are not focused on a specific external task.
Right.
It's the network responsible for deep introspection, daydreaming, self-reflection, moral reasoning, and meaning-making.
That's where the deep, quiet thoughts happen. It's where you sit and ponder your existence.
It is the biological theater where the fitra operates. But if you are hitting your brain with a dopamine hammer 2,600 times a day, your DMN never gets a chance to turn on.
The internal noise is just deafening.
The antenna is buried under static.
It makes you realize how perfectly engineered our modern environment is to prevent spiritual reflection.
Yes.
We look up at the sky and complain that God is silent, but maybe we are just standing next to a massive speaker blasting static, and we're absolutely refusing to walk into the quiet to listen.
That is a very accurate way to frame it. The signal of the fitra isn't absent. It's being intentionally drowned out by our lifestyles.
Right.
The solution to this isn't for God to turn up his volume to a coercive, deafening, sky-splitting level. The solution is for us to turn down the noise.
Turn down the static.
That's why almost every spiritual discipline in history exists. Fasting, prayer, meditation, sitting in absolute silence. These aren't just rituals. They are practical methods of turning down the internal static so the antenna can actually pick up the signal.
I love that. But I want to push back on you here because this brings up one of the hardest, most resilient objections to faith.
Okay, let's hear it.
What about the people who do sit in the quiet? What about the brilliant, sincere scientists or philosophers who spend their entire lives studying the universe, looking deeply at reality, sitting in quiet laboratories or observatories, and they genuinely do not see God?
The argument of the sincere skeptic?
Yes. In philosophy, they called it the non-resistant non-believer. If the fitra is real and the universe is pointing to God, why do these brilliant, highly educated minds conclude that naturalism is completely sufficient? Are we just going to dismiss them and say they're all arrogant, like Pharaoh, and lying to themselves? That feels intellectually dishonest.
No, we absolutely don't have to say they're lying to themselves, and we shouldn't. We have to look at something cognitive scientists call the illusion of objectivity.
The illusion of objectivity. Break that down for me.
We have this cultural myth that highly intelligent scientists are purely rational, neutral computing machines. We think they evaluate raw data without any personal or cultural bias.
Right. They're perfectly objective.
But cognitive science shows that this is entirely a myth. Every human brain filters data.
This connects to Dan Kahan's work on identity protective cognition.
Yes. Dan Kahan's research is illuminating here. He showed that even the most brilliant minds evaluate evidence in ways that unconsciously protect their social and professional identities.
So they're protecting their tribe.
Human beings are tribal first and rational second.
So if a scientist's entire professional identity, their peer group, their funding, their tenure, and their entire sense of self-worth is built within a strict, secular academic framework,
then their brain will actively, unconsciously select data that confirms naturalism, and it will raise the evidentiary bar for any religious claims to an impossibly high standard.
unconsciously.
Unconsciously. They aren't doing it maliciously. They aren't plotting in a dark room. They genuinely believe they're being perfectly objective. But academia operates on a foundational rule called methodological naturalism.
I want to spend a minute on that term, methodological naturalism.
Right.
It basically means excluding the supernatural by default before you even look at the evidence, right?
It is the absolute rule of the game in modern science. You must explain every phenomenon through physical material processes.
Yeah.
Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you are walking on a beach with a metal detector. You sweep the entire beach and you find coins, bottle caps, and nails. You conclude, there is no plastic on this beach. I have swept every inch and my instrument found zero plastic.
But the metal detector is structurally incapable of finding plastic. It doesn't mean the plastic isn't there. It means your methodology explicitly filters it out.
Exactly. Methodological naturalism is the metal detector. The scientist looks at the incredible complexity of the universe and sees only unguided mechanism, not because there is no designer, but because their methodology explicitly forbids them from positing a designer.
That makes me think of the fine-tuning of the universe. The papers brought up the astrophysicists Geraint Lewis and Luke Barnes.
Yes, they wrote a fantastic book called A Fortunate Universe.
Right. They outline how the fundamental constants of physics, things like gravity, the strong nuclear force, the expansion rate of the universe, they're so precisely calibrated that if they were altered by even a hair's breadth, life couldn't exist.
Yes.
Stars wouldn't form. Chemistry wouldn't happen. The universe would just be a sterile void.
The mathematical precision required for life is staggering. It is practically incalculable.
So a theist looks at that incredible razor-edge fine-tuning and says, look, this is obvious evidence of a creator tuning the dials.
But an atheist scientist looks at the exact same data, the exact same mathematical equations, and says, well, we must just be one universe in an infinite multiverse where every possible combination exists, and we just happen to live in the lucky one.
They see the exact same numbers.
The exact same numbers. But because of their different internal metal detectors, they come to completely opposite conclusions.
Because the evidence is perfectly perched on the threshold of ambiguity?
Yes. And this is the sheer beauty of the epistemic distance we've been talking about. Lewis and Barnes point out something incredible. The range of physical constants that allows for life to exist is the exact same range that allows for hiddenness.
Say more about that. How does fine-tuning allow for hiddenness?
If the universe was more obviously designed, say, if physical laws were constantly being suspended, or if miracles were a daily observable feature of physics, or if stars aligned to spell out words, causality would break down.
Science would be impossible.
Science relies on predictable regularity. The regularity of natural laws allows for scientific predictability. An atheist looks at that predictable regularity and sees a self-sustaining blind machine.
But a believer looks at that exact same regularity and sees the deliberate, faithful habit of a lawgiver.
Yes. The evidence is perfectly calibrated. It is compelling enough to deeply reward sincere seeking, but ambiguous enough to preserve cognitive freedom.
You can choose.
You can look at the fine-tuning and choose to see a multiverse, or you can choose to see God. The raw data doesn't physically force you either way. Your inner disposition, your humility, your willingness to seek, that is what tips the scale.
Okay, but I have to ask the fairness question here.
It always comes up.
It does. Isn't it profoundly unfair that this disposition is so heavily influenced by where we happen to be born?
Yeah.
I mean, some people are born into environments where belief is as easy as breathing. They have supportive families, a beautiful culture of faith, access to knowledge. And others are born into environments where belief is incredibly hard.
Very hard.
Maybe the culture is totally secular. Or maybe they suffered severe religious trauma from abusive authority figures.
It is a vital, painful question. If the test of life is so dependent on our environment, our psychological trauma, and our neurobiology, how can a just God hold everyone to the exact same standard?
Exactly. It seems like the starting line of the marathon is in completely different places for different people. Some people are starting a mile from the finish line, and others are starting with broken legs in a maze.
It's true. The starting lines are wildly different, but classical Islamic epistemology has an incredibly sophisticated and deeply merciful answer to this.
I'd love to hear it.
We can look at scholars like Al-Ghazali and Fakhr al-Din al-Razi. They didn't view humanity as a monolith. They distinguished between different types of ignorance.
Let's talk about those. Yal Basit and Yal Murakab.
Right. Gal-Basit translates roughly to simple ignorance. This is excusable ignorance. Yes. It occurs when a person lacks access to the truth through no fault of their own. Maybe they were born in a remote area before the internet, or, much more relevant today, maybe they were presented with a completely distorted, traumatic, abusive version of religion that their fitra naturally recoiled from.
So if someone rejects religion because the only religion they saw was hypocritical and cruel, their ignorance isn't a moral failing. it's circumstantial.
Correct. Their rejection might actually be a sign of a healthy moral compass rejecting falsehood.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Then there is Yal Murakab, which is compound ignorance. This is when a person doesn't know the truth, but they arrogantly think they do, and they actively reject clear evidence out of pride, ego, or a desire to maintain their destructive habits.
So God's justice meticulously differentiates between the trauma victim and the arrogant denier.
Completely. A core, unshakable principle in Islamic theology is that God judges a person based entirely on their absolute limits, their specific capacity. The Arabic term is wuzuz.
Wuzzes.
The Quran explicitly states that God does not burden a soul beyond its capacity.
So if a person's severe psychological trauma or their deep cultural conditioning makes it genuinely neurologically impossible for them to accept certain theological concepts,
Then they are simply not judged for what is beyond their capacity. God evaluates the moral trajectory of the soul. He looks at their sincerity.
right?
He looks at their intellectual humility. He looks at what they did with the specific limited tools and evidence they were given. Did they try to be good? Did they seek truth genuinely, even if they never found the right vocabulary for it?
That is so different from the popular narrative.
Yep.
It's not just a rigid doctrinal checkbox. It isn't a game show where God asks, did you guess the right religion, yes or no?
That is a very shallow anthropomorphic understanding of divine judgment. The classical theologians developed a concept called kasb, which means acquisition or genuine striving.
Striving.
If a soul engages in kasb, if they genuinely strive for truth, live ethically, treat others well, and maintain intellectual humility, God responds to that effort with tawfiq.
Tawfiq being divine facilitation or grace.
Yes. God guides the sincere seeker. He opens doors for them. And if a person dies while still sincerely seeking, having never found the complete theological truth due to structural or epistemic limitations they couldn't control, classical Islamic theology leaves their fate to the perfect, nuanced, infinite justice of a God who knows the exact contours of their internal struggles.
That is incredibly comforting. It means the system isn't rigged. It means the fog we're all walking through isn't arbitrary. It's calibrated for each specific person.
It is a custom-calibrated fog. The hiddenness is not a one-size-fits-all darkness. It's perfectly tailored to provide the exact amount of epistemic distance necessary for your specific soul to exercise its unique moral agency.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have.
If you've been listening with us this whole time, we've gone from the neurobiology of the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex to the somatic collapse of Musa on the mountain, to the psychological defense mechanisms of Pharaoh, and the digital static drowning out the Phaedra today.
And all of these threads point back to that one central, beautiful paradigm shift.
Let's pull it all together. The hiddenness of God is not the silence of an absent, uncaring parent. It is not a failure of evidence. It is a deliberate, structurally precise, profoundly merciful withdrawal. It is the very architecture of human freedom.
It is a creator who loves his creation far too much to overwhelm it. He steps back into the unseen so that we can step forward into our humanity.
Wow.
If he didn't hide, we couldn't exist as moral beings. We would just be terrified biology reacting to infinite power.
We would be hostages to certainty.
And that leaves us with one final provocative thought to consider before we finish.
Okay.
Think about the Islamic concept of paradise, the ultimate afterlife.
Okay, I'm thinking about it.
In paradise, the veil is finally lifted. The believers are promised that the greatest reward above any physical pleasure is that they will actually see their Lord.
The beatific vision. The ultimate closeness.
But ask yourself, why is the veil lifted then and not now?
Why?
Because the test is over. The period of moral formation is finished.
Oh.
The soul has spent its entire earthly life maturing in the dark. It has wrestled with doubt. It has made the hard, agonizing choices. It has built its internal moral architecture through faith in the unseen. And now, finally, because of that lifelong struggle, it has developed the structural capacity to witness the light without shattering.
That is a stunning thought.
Mm-hmm.
The absolute clarity that we are constantly begging for right now
Yep.
is actually our ultimate reward later. We just aren't ready for it yet.
We aren't ready. The hiddenness of this world is the womb where the soul grows. You don't tear open the womb before the child is ready to breathe the air.
May Allah grant us success. Come on, let's go. Don't forget to follow this channel, Missing Dots. Thank you.